Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Horror Humpdays. And tonight we're on episode 15. And every Wednesday night, I come on here on the interwebs and I read you guys a short horror story from my writings. And tonight we are starting the Sleepwalker saga, which basically are the stories taken from my book that came out a couple of years ago, Sleepwalker. And yeah, it's about a couple of guys that go out hunting, and one of them falls through a thin spot in reality. Hey, Kevin, it's gonna be a sleepless night for you because I don't think you want to fall through a thin spot when you're sleeping, do you, buddy? These mics, I tell you. I think my mic stand is giving out on me. Good evening, Shannon. Welcome. So it's been a couple of emotionally heavy days for one and all. And like I've said in a post that I put in earlier, I don't talk political stuff on here. I think there's a time and a place for it, and it's not here. Definitely not here at the b.hive. There's other places for that. And I don't want to alienate anybody because of who they voted for or which way they lean. I am here all about reading stories to you guys and playing music very badly to you. So, and Kevin thinks he's already fallen through. Well, I mean, dude, you are in Florida, so yeah, I would probably feel that way on the daily. So I'm gonna read the intro to this book. Basically tells you how I came up with the idea for all the stories in this book. Oh, thanks a lot, Shannon. I did, yes, I got a vote. Somebody wrote me in for mayor of Winthrop, and yeah, that touched my heart. So maybe I'll run someday, but not today. So yeah. So anyhow, yeah, this is the story is kind of near and dear to me because it's about the friendship between myself and a high school buddy I grew up with. And he and I decided to go hunting one year, and we've kind of been doing it ever since. It's been a way for him to help with his PTSD, and it's also been a really good place for me to kind of chill out in the woods and a good place to meditate and stuff. So we did get a deer a couple years ago, actually when I wrote this. So yeah, it was 70 degrees out, and we had to get the deer back to Winthrop before the meat went bad. So what we did was we stuffed the deer full of ice. A friend of ours owns the resort up there, who is also one of the main characters in this book. And him and his wife own this resort up in Reamer, Minnesota. And I think he emptied his ice machine to fill the deer up to keep the meat good, and then we wrapped it in tarps. And I got her down here, and I had a neighbor that helped butcher it, and then a very good friend of mine helped me process it. So we got her. The meat was very good. So we'll see what happens this year. Mostly I go deer hunting just for the camaraderie and some peace and quiet in the woods. Good evening, Mr. Schroeder. Good to see you too, sir. I hope you're being safe, or if you're out on the road. Todd here is a truck driver, and spent most of his adult life out there on the highway. He's been all over the U.S. So a few of you out there are truck drivers. So I could never do that. I fall asleep going to the mailbox. So anyhow, without further ado, I think what I will do is I'm going to start reading the introduction to the book, and then we'll jump in and we'll do chapter 1 for tonight, and then each horror hump day after this will be a chapter. And so if you miss an episode, you probably have to watch it on the reruns there so that you keep caught up on it, because the main character is constantly falling through different horrible realities and trying to get back to his own. So, all right, here we go. And let's pull it up here. Sleepwalker. Forward. Well, here we are again, folks. I thought I had sworn off the horror genre altogether. I was working on 2 other novels that were like pseudo-biographies of me, The Ballad of Broken Bird, and another of my mom's life called A Woman's Lot. It was Halloween of 2020, when we were all hunkered down and quarantined, that I came up with the idea to read my first horror anthology, Midnight Snacks, live on Facebook and Instagram. I then read my other horror anthology, Nyctophobia, on Halloween of 2021. I suddenly realized I should probably come up with some new material for 2022, so I stopped everything on the 2 novels and started banging this beauty out. The entire concept of this one came from an actual event. Hey, Steph. A school chum of mine from way back head up to his cabin in northern Minnesota to hunt deer every opener weekend. Deer opener of 2020 had me and my friend Jim out in the woods early. The sun hadn't even come up yet, so I sat up there in my deer stand awaiting daylight, because you can't fire your gun in the dark. I fell asleep and began to dream. The horror of this is that I kept dreaming about waking up. And I would go about my day, and then I'd soon realize there were some discrepancies in my dream, and I'd realize that I was in a dream, and I'd wake up in another dream. It was exhausting. And when I woke up for real, I still wasn't sure if I was in the conscious world or in dreamland. Anyhow, that's how this book came about. Each story is a different reality with the same characters. I'm hoping this formula works, because in the end, the story is about friendship and brotherhood. A shout out goes to Steve and Erica, 2 friends and great hosts in Bigfoot country. A thank you to Allison for holding down the fort every year while her husband and I go play around in the woods for a weekend. You'll find these humans' counterparts within these pages. You'll also find a little town called Reamer, Minnesota on the map. And if you're lucky enough to visit, you may find Sasquatch. My apologies for the liberties I took with these. You won't find Siren, Minnesota on the map, but it is based on the current little town I reside in at the time of this book. I'll be drinking Lemmy's at the Dirty Holes equivalent. Now, shh. Hunker down over there in the tall grass. Strange things happen in this valley, so for the sake of all that is holy, stay awake. Bradley Bodeker, 2022. For Jim, Veilhaz till the end. Good God, what eldritch dream world was this into which he had blundered? H.P. Lovecraft. Chapter 1. The Cabin. It had been a tradition for 28 years that Jeffrey Eastman and Beau Broadmeadow would come up to the Eastman family cabin on opening weekend of deer hunting season. It fell on the first weekend of November, right at the point when autumn turns into winter. Jeff traditionally arrived up there first, usually scoped out a good spot a few days in advance, and had everything set up by the time Beau made his way to Oxbow Township. They usually met up with longtime friend Will Stevenson, who owned the local motel in nearby Reamer. They would dine at the Woodsman Cafe and have a few too many at the municipal liquor store called the Muni. This year was different. After years of restrictions, From the COVID-19 pandemic, Bo was tired of sitting at home and only being able to go out when he worked. So he took off a couple days early and met up with Jeff at the Muni. Jeff had already been 5 deep of whiskey cokes, which Jeff nicknamed Lemmys after Lemmy Kilmister of the rock band Motorhead, and Will was sitting at about 9 beers. "Well, I guess I have some catching up to do," Bo said as he sat belly up at the bar. "Did you stop at the cabin first?" Jeff asked. "No, came straight here. Hit fucking traffic from Minneapolis to Brainerd. Didn't let up until I got about a mile south of the cabin." "Yeah," Will speaks up. "Get more and more of the big city folks coming up here. I shouldn't complain because they give me business, but Jesus H, they annoy the shit out of me. They're buying up all the land around here. We're losing land to hunt." "Speaking of which," Jeff added, "we lost our usual spot." "What?" Bo snapped, lowering his glass of Jack Daniels. "Gus Taylor retired," Will said. "Sold the farm and moved down to Florida." "Well, fuck. Most private land around here is already spoken for as far as hunting goes. So, I'm guessing our only choice is state land." "I'm afraid so," Jeff mumbled. "But Will said he knows of a spot on state land that no one hits." "Because there's no deer?" Bo said sarcastically. "On the contrary," Will said. "Every run I've been on, there's herds and herds of them." Will, as well as being a business owner of the motel, also put together an ATV club that hosts several runs a year through the backwoods of Cass County. Bo and Jeff were excited at the report of deer. For several years, a permit only allowed a hunter to hunt bucks, but this year the deer population had been up, and it was hunter's choice. "Why don't you two swing out tomorrow morning?" Will said. We'll take the side-by-side up the trail and we'll head into Wendigo Woods. Let you scope out the place." Wendigo Woods?" Bo said. "The local skins call that place cursed." Skins, as Bo so lovingly called them, were what natives called each other. Bo's father was Lakota. Jeff was also native, as his father came from the Eskimos of Alaska down the line. Will laughed. "Well, Reamer is supposedly home of Bigfoot. Have you seen him in all your years of hunting up here?" Truth be told, the city of Reamer's claim to fame is being the home of Bigfoot. They celebrate Bigfoot days. There are also guides for hire to take you out in the woods to find Bigfoot evidence. The Discovery Channel even did a piece on the town. Had anybody really seen Bigfoot? Depends on who you asked. And if you were to sit and chat with the locals some morning at the Woodsman Cafe, someone knew somebody that had seen Bigfoot. Jeff and Bo laughed a little and shook their heads. "Besides," Will continued, "Jeff is former airborne ranger and you're a former cop. You both usually go into the woods armed to the teeth." Jeff and Bo laughed again and nodded. Jeff was an airborne ranger who saw combat in Panama, Iraq, Somalia, Syria, and Afghanistan. Bo served on the Black Earth Reservation as a tribal officer, now semi-retired and worked part-time for the Siren Police Department. "If anything, you'll run into a bear or a pack of wolves." Nothing more was said about it. Will finished his last can and excused himself as he had to take over the front desk of his hotel. Jeff and Bo finished their drinks and headed back to the cabin. The cabin had been in Jeff's family for over 50 years. His parents bought the property, which sits on the banks of Lake Manoomin, and built a one-room cabin. An outhouse stood in the back. There was no electricity, and just a wooden stove gave them heat, and they either grilled or cooked on the stove. There was also a fireplace, which hadn't been used in a long time. A table sat in the middle with 2 double beds and a bunk bed tucked to the far walls. Bo and Jeff had been friends since junior high. Bo had gone off to art college in Chicago, and Jeff ended up joining the Army and served several tours of duty before coming home and starting a family. Bo ended up being a cop. They both met up again at a class reunion and have been hunting buddies ever since. They both enjoyed the clean, crisp air of late autumn in the northern Minnesota woods. Also, just the time in the great outdoors helped quell some of the demons they both carried around deep in their guts. After the stove was lit, they both sat at the small table and poured each other a Lemmy and began to deal a hand of Texas Hold'em. The ceremonial cigars were lit, and they began a 3-hour game. "Here's to another trip." Jeff held up his red Solo cup. "Hope for a successful hunt. Cheers." Bo clicked his own cup against Jeff's. "What's on your mind? You seem a little off." Bo took a sip of his drink. "Me? Nah, I'm good." "I call bullshit." Bo chuckled. "You know me well." "Well, get it out." "I'm a little concerned about the Wendigo Woods." "It's just a name, like Devil's Rock or Devil's Lake." "Maybe." "You've been around the natives too long." "Jeff, I am native." "Well, so am I, but I've seen enough real-life horror in Panama and Iraq to believe in superstitions. And I've seen enough unexplained things dealing with skins after hours." Jeff puffed on his cigar and took a long gulp from his cup and filled it again. "Well," he said, adding a splash of Coke, "let's just take a scout around tomorrow morning with Will and see what we feel." Bo had a pair of aces. "You owe me a quarter," Bo said with a smile. "Damn it." "See? Bad juju already." Bo laughed to himself. "Hey, Bobby, welcome." They played several more hands, and Bo was $3.75 richer. They finished their drinks and crushed out their cigars. Jeff put a bundle in the stove, hoping it would be enough to stave off the overnight chill. It wasn't. Will's wife, Becca, had breakfast ready for them when they got to the hotel. French toast, sausage, 2 eggs, and toast. The Stevensons were gracious hosts, always making anyone feel at home. When they finished, they hopped up onto Will's side-by-side ATV. The scenery was beautiful. The birch trees were so close together and went on forever. The trail went off and merged with a back gravel road, and as they came around a bend, everything seemed to change. The air got colder. Most trees looked like they were dead. It was a mix of pine and birch, and they weren't spaced close together like they were back on the trail. They drove along Yellow Creek and then turned off onto an entrance to Wendigo Woods. A small, rickety wooden bridge creaked as they drove over the top of it. "What do you think?" Will asked, shutting off the ATV. Bo was searching for the right words. "Different," Jeff said, surveying the area. "That's it. The air, the vegetation, everything seems different." "Touched by the Wendigo," Jeff whispered, mostly to himself. The silence was deafening. There were usually birds singing to one another, even this late in the morning. Squirrels would usually be warning each other of the arrival of strangers. The occasional crow would caw to his friends, or a flock of geese would be honking to each other to stay in line. But there was none of that. Just the sound of dried leaves and dirt crunching under their boots. "Hey, Chuck." Chuck brought the badgers. Jeff and Bo chambered around in their pistols and another in their rifles. Jeff had an AR-15 and Bo hunted with a Winchester 308. "Geez, you guys spook easy," Will said. "Come on," Jeff said. "Let's check out the trail." Will started his ATV up again, and they rode slowly through the hunting trails. He wanted to take them to the spot he had seen a large number of deer. They stopped at a rise that was about 4 miles from the entrance. They got out and stood near a dead tree. Before them stood a valley with dead trees sticking up like black needles from the earth. "Is that clear cut?" Bo asked. "No," Will answered. "Not sure what happened here. It looks like a small fire gutted this part of the woods. We do get a lot of lightning strikes in this area." "This is where you spotted some deer?" "Not just some. Hundreds. There's a deer trail over there going from south to north. They follow that and congregate down in the middle area. I think there's a small pond there that is fed from Yellow Creek." Jeff spoke up. "I'm going to go check the other side of this valley." "I can drive you over there," Will said. "I want to get a feel for their spot." "Okay." Jeff's expression was dead serious. He always got serious when he started scouting. "You want me to come along?" Bo asked. "Nah, you keep Will company. I won't be long." They could hear Jeff's steps echoing through the small valley. As he made his way towards the small pond, 3 deer, a doe and her 2 fawns, leaped from their cover in a small bramble to his right side. Bo pulled out a flask with whiskey. He drew from it and handed it over to Will. "What you drinking?" Will asked. "That's some homemade stuff there," Bo answered. "Recipe was from my great-granddad. It's been a tradition for the men in my family to whip up a batch every 5 years and take a flaskful for hunting." "What's in it? Is it like moonshine?" Bo chuckled. "Oh, it's a little stronger than that. I'd take a small sip at first." Will's eyes watered when he sniffed at it. "Jesus on a crutch!" He tipped it in a quick flick of his wrists, and it went down his throat like lightning. Will hacked and coughed. He had inhaled it into his lung. Cursing and spitting and gagging, Will handed the flask back to him. "What the fuck, man?" he said. "You're not supposed to inhale it," Bo said, watching Jeff with his binoculars. Jeff couldn't believe what he was seeing. There was deer sign all over this area, from large to small buck, and doe sign almost amongst the tiny branches that stuck out from the dead trunks. Doe had been known to suck on tiny branches as they passed through so that their young could find them if they wandered from the herd. He looked up and saw Bo observing him with the binoculars and gave his trademark thumbs up. "Looks like we're sold on the spot, Will," Bo said. "See?" he said. "You guys are sure to get your limit out here." "Yeah, just a weird vibe around here is all." "Well, maybe that's a good omen." "I guess we'll find out." Jeff walked back to his friends. Despite his years, he was still in military shape. "Think you should hunker down over there by those tall weeds and stump," Jeff says. "I'll hunker down on the other side." "Sounds like a plan," Bo said. There's so much sign here, it's like Manhattan for deer." That night, swilling too much of what Jeff's wife calls bad decision juice, the boys were laughing it up about the old days at the Muni. It's funny how being in the company of certain people can take you back in time to when you were young and bulletproof. Looking at the two of them, you'd think they were a couple of junior high school kids planning their next Dungeons and Dragons game. The laughs ended abruptly when Toby Keith came on the jukebox. It was one of his patriotic songs that would get everyone in boots and flannel to remove their baseball caps and place them on their heart while they raised their can of Busch Light. Bo knew Jeff well enough and long enough to know that this was a bad thing. You could play any song and any genre of music, and he'd dance to it if he was drunk enough. But Toby Keith? Not good. Not good at all. "Turn this shit off!" Jeff screams as he heads for the jukebox, and the guy who was still entering songs on it. "Did you play this fucker?" "Yeah," the kid said. "Toby Keith is the greatest." Jeff wobbled a bit and then yanked the cord out of the jukebox. The bar got silent. Bo whispered to the bartender to bring the check. "Toby Keith is a fake posing son of a bitch," Jeff continued. But it sounded more like, "Toby Keith is a fake posing son of a bitch." "Hey, Jeff," Bo tried to coax his friend outside. "Come on, man, let's go back to the cabin." "Listen to your friend," the guy at the jukebox says to Jeff. "Go the fuck home." "Whoa, pal," Bo says to the jukebox guy. "Don't talk to a combat vet like that." "Combat vet? If he was a combat vet, then he'd appreciate what Toby Keith has done." Jukebox guy's jaw connected with Jeff's fist. He went back onto the floor. Jeff grabbed his shirt and pulled him up enough to be face to face with him. "Toby Keith and Ted Nugent did a USO concert for us vets in Kosovo," Jeff spat. "After the show, Nugent made sure every uniform in that crowd that wanted a photo and an autograph got one. Toby fucking Keith couldn't be bothered with any of that fanboy shit and stayed locked in his trailer." Some of the men at the bar were getting up, and Bo stood between Jeff and the crowd. "Hey, muchacho," Bo says to Jeff without turning around. "What do you say we continue our drinks at the cabin?" Without losing his grip or his stare at jukebox guy, he says, "Why the fuck would I want to do that?" Knowing his old friends and knowing that sometimes Jack Daniels and PTSD don't mix in a crowd, Bo lightened his voice. "Because why would we want to hang out with a bunch of Toby Keith fans?" Jeff's eyes went from red to their natural soft brown again. His grip loosened and he was back to his relaxed self. "Good point," he says, and lets jukebox guy go and drops him to the ground. He stands up straight, pats Bo on the shoulder. "You got the keys?" Bo looks at his friend and they both walk out without further incident. The ride was quiet back to the cabin. When the headlights shined on the old rustic cabin, Bo killed the lights. "You all right, buddy?" Bo asked. "Thanks, brother," Jeff says. "Think nothing of it. Glad to have you back." I think I'm tired. I'm going to hit the sack." They both went in, and Jeff fell into his bunk and was out in seconds. Bo got a fire going in the wood stove and made sure to pack it enough to keep the chill off until 4 a.m. when they'd wake up to make their way into Wendigo woods and catch themselves a deer. "Hey, Dwayne, good to see you, buddy." Like the good soldier he was, Jeff was wide awake at 4 sharp. The birds hadn't even woken up yet. He shook Bo awake, who grumbled incoherently and then sat up. The wood had burned out, and there was nothing but small embers snapping in the wood stove. They could see their own breath, and they began to dress in their blaze-orange layers. They stopped and picked up hot coffees and donuts at the convenience store along the way, and then made their way to County Road 11. By the time they reached the small single-lane gravel trail that had led them into Wendigo Woods, their coffees were drank and their donuts were eaten. Jeff pulled his truck into the overgrown grass lot that was roughly 50 yards from the valley. He killed the lights, and they began loading their guns. After a round was chambered into each weapon, and they made sure they had their packs secured, they headed up the small embankment to Bo's spot. "Are you good?" Jeff whispered. Bo gave him the thumbs up, and Jeff began to walk his way to the other side of the valley. Bo set up his spot with a tarp and a soft square cushion. He positioned himself to be comfortable, which is sometimes impossible when winter's chill is biting at the tip of your nose, and you begin to feel every itch on your body underneath the many layers of clothing. but he was still tired. And if he had something comfy under his ass and a tree trunk to lean on, he was happy. There was a thick fog in the valley. It glowed a strange yellowish hue from the full moon that stood high above them. Jeff's flashlight beam disappeared into the dense plumage. Eventually, he saw his friend's flashlight appear on the other side of the valley, just above the fog line. Bo stared intently at the fog. It had a strange density to it, as if it were thick spider webbing that floated along the ground, waiting to trap some hapless victim. He began to see shapes within the fog, as a child stares at the sky trying to find shapes in the clouds. His eyelids were heavy, almost as if the air around him was trying to lull him to sleep. The coffee evidently hadn't sparked energy into him. Ah, well, he thought to himself, I'm not allowed to shoot until daylight anyways. I've got a couple hours to nod off. His eyelids got heavier. He could sort of make out Jeff's hunkering down in his spot across the valley, as sleep was starting to cover him like a heavy, warm blanket. He remembered something an elder had told him about special places. Places that were different than any place around them. Places where strange things happen and strange things crawl. Places the old shaman folk would call thin spots. Yeah, that's what it was, he remembered. He called them thin spots. Special places where the boundaries were thin. Places that would sometimes rip and let other things in. Terrible things that didn't belong here. Sometimes things from here would end up over there. His lids got heavier, like when a scene from a movie fades to black. At first, he welcomed the sleep. It would be a quick 2-hour nap, and then he'd wake up refreshed and be alert for hunting. But the thought of thin spots began to dance in his head, and he thought maybe he heard something in the fog. Something that wasn't from here, but from over there. Not from where Jeff sat positioned, but from that special somewhere else where terrible things come from. So part of him bucked, trying in small desperation to wake himself up, but his eyelids were thicker and heavier than the fog before him. Maybe that isn't fog, he thought. Maybe that really is spider webbing from some massive mutant spider. But it didn't trap Jeff. Maybe Jeff doesn't see it or sense it. So he can't see it? What's that noise coming from in the depths of that fog? When one finds himself in these thin spots, he remembers clearly now, guard yourself and be alert, because one can lose themselves in these thin spots. As sleep overtook him, he thought that maybe, just maybe, he heard a strange mewling sound, a screech from inside that thick, yellowish curtain. And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 1. And next week, we will be reading chapter 2, which is titled The Wendigo. So you know who he's going to meet. So anyhow, thank you guys very much for coming out and joining me tonight. It was kind of a short night. These are kind of short chapters. And maybe I should read 2 chapters a night instead. I don't know. We'll see. But as per the story, I need to get things ready to go because I'm leaving Friday to meet Jim up north, up there at the cabin, and hopefully I don't fall through a thin spot because I won't be here to to read this. I'll have to have Kevin read these stories to you. So there's that. Um, Speaking of the books, Thin Spot, my new book. Dwayne, I do have a copy for you. Kevin, I'm meeting you around Christmas time, and I'll get that to you, and we'll have a couple drinks. Bobby has his. I also need to arrange time to go down and give Shannon his. Dwayne, I don't know if you want to. I don't know where exactly you live. I don't know if we're able to meet up. I can hand it over to you, or if you want me to send it to you, I can do that as well. I know you're also on the road a lot, so you let me where it works for you, buddy, and I'll get your book to you. So yeah. So that first chapter, um, yeah, that was just kind of an introduction to the life of Bo and Jeff. And it starts picking up right away in second chapter. And you are very welcome, Dwayne. And you have a good night. I want all you guys to have a good night. I did want to say something though, something that kind of bothers me. It's not political, I promise. It's about the. I've been seeing a lot of advertisements of these places. Yes, Shannon, I've got some time off coming up, and I will let you know when, and I'll probably come down there and hand you the book and visit with some Fairmont people, including yourself. So, but yes, I will definitely want to come down there. I mean, my daughter lives down there, so I'll definitely need to go in and see her as well. So, and I got to see Chuck as well. So, thanks, Chuck. I will have a safe trip up there. Usually, well, I know one year when I drove up there, um, Jim and I were driving together, and there were so many deer along the highway, and they were running so close I could have rolled my window down and got one in a headlock, and we could have dragged it back to the cabin. That's how thick the deer were out there. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We're gonna hit the same spot this year, unless something makes us go to the Wendigo Woods, which I don't think there is a Wendigo Woods up there, and if there is, that would kind of be freaky. But yeah. So one of the good things this book did was it did excite some people in Reamer, Minnesota, because they're like, "What? Somebody wrote a book based here in our little town." So um, I had been invited up to do a book reading to those good folks up there, and sell and sign some books at Bigfoot Days. The unfortunate thing was they canceled Bigfoot Days because of road construction. So I was not able to make it out there, and I guess we never really planned anything after that. So, but yeah, it's a beautiful area. It really is. So if you guys get a chance and you're touring Minnesota, I would suggest going to Reamer, Minnesota. I suggest checking in at my friend Steve's hotel. It's Reamer Hotel, and he also has a campground there that's beautiful, just acres of wooded campground. It's really awesome. So, anyhow, enough plugs. Come, I'll be back Sunday night, and Tuesday I will be doing the Eagles for Tunes for Tuesday, and then of course we'll be doing chapter 2 on horror Humpdays. I was gonna. Oh yeah. I might do a live stream Sunday for Coffee with Friends, and that'll be from the woods. So yeah, we got that going on. So yeah, all right. So have a great rest of your evening. Have a great rest of your week, and hopefully we see you Sunday morning. Coffee with Friends, and I will be up earlier because Jim wakes up before the sun. So so there's that. Yeah. So all right, you guys, thanks again. Thank you everybody for sharing my stuff and telling your friends and family, like, hey, check out Brad and blah blah blah, and the nice things everybody else has said to me about my reading. people like my voice, people like my stories, people like my playing and singing. I don't know so much about that, but hey, it's all fun, right? It's all fun and games, and we're going to poke somebody in the eye. So, anyhow, I love you guys, and I can't wait to see you next week. Mwah. See you later, and Kevin, that one goes for Bobby, too. All right, have a good one, guys. Peace.